They're fools, knaves, misguided zealots representing a fringe of our society. Who are these awful people? Well, they're the ones that think that President Obama's nuclear deal is a mistake. But actually, there's some who could stop Congress from passing it. And they're not Republicans. They are Democrats. And now a former Democratic senator and vice presidential candidate, Joe Lieberman, is also working to stop the deal with Iran.
Congress is set to vote on the agreement next month, and both sides know the stakes are extremely high. Heather Sells has the story.
The president and his family have left the White House for a vacation in Martha's Vineyard, and lawmakers have emptied out the Capitol for their annual congressional recess. But the debate over the new Iran nuclear deal is red hot. One of the biggest critics is Senator Chuck Schumer, who's poised to become the leading Democrat in the Senate. He is calling for a new deal with Iran.
I think given the many holes in this agreement, it's worth the chance to do it. It'll be hard.
Two leading Jewish Democrats in the House, Representatives Eliot Engel and Nita Lowey, have also announced their opposition. At least publicly, the White House remains undaunted.
We've got a strong case to make in terms of persuading members of Congress and the American public that this is, in fact, the best approach.
The White House has acknowledged that Congress will likely pass legislation to strike down the deal. The real battle then will come later after the president vetoes it. The question will then be whether Congress can gather enough votes to override the president's veto. Opponents of the deal have scored a coup. A former Democratic candidate for vice president, former Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman, will become the chairman of a nonprofit group that opposes the deal. One of the biggest concerns right now, the agreement does not permanently cut off Iran's path to a nuclear weapon. Even the president has acknowledged that when the agreement expires in 15 years, it would only take Tehran a matter of months to acquire the materials needed to build a bomb. And Republicans also want to see the texts of the so-called secret side deals that are part of the agreement. In the end, says Schumer, there can be no arm twisting on such a decision. He says his was very personal.
But this is not going to be one of those things where you can force anybody to vote. It's a decision of conscience.
And in the weeks ahead, other Democrats will be coming under heavy pressure from both sides to either approve or disapprove the highly controversial deal. Heather Sells, CBN News.
It's a terrible mistake, ladies and gentlemen. A terrible. You wonder what is going on with the president. It's almost like he's got to cozy up to these dictators. He has to make peace with the Iranians and with the Venezuelans and with the Cubans and all those people who hate America. What is it? Well, I think that I congratulate Joe Lieberman, who's a terrific guy, and Chuck Schumer for the bold stand they're taking. But they'll lead the way because, you know, being Jewish, that people say, well, you're in favor of Israel. So we need a few non-Jewish Democrats to come forward and say, well, we're against it too. Well, the deal with Iran is one of the top issues among Republican presidential candidates. But they've also been talking about another issue that's extremely important here at home. That's religious freedom. Ephraim Grimm has that story from the CBN newsroom. Here's Ephraim.
Pat, when the Supreme Court ruled on gay marriage, it led to a new discussion over the importance of religious liberty in America. And that issue has gained the attention and the support of GOP candidates. David Brody has the story.
On the campaign trail, it's one subject that's uniting most Republican presidential candidates.
The United States of America did not create religious liberty. Religious liberty created the United States of America.
Much of the legal pushback is aimed at the Supreme Court and its legalization of gay marriage.
If we surrender to the judicial branch as if it is the last, final, and ultimate word, then we have surrendered to judicial tyranny.
Mike Huckabee is already out with a plan to defend the religious rights of anyone facing legal trouble for standing up for traditional marriage. So is fellow candidate Ted Cruz. They both pledge to take the executive order route if elected.
You instruct the Attorney General to defend religious liberty and the rights of people of faith and conscience, whether they're business owners acting as individuals, whether they're hospitals, churches, schools, adoption agencies, doesn't matter what it is.
I will direct the federal agencies, the IRS, every agency, that no person of faith will be discriminated against because of their religious belief. No person of faith will be persecuted because he or she follows a traditional teaching of marriage, a biblical teaching of marriage, as the union of one man or woman.
The public appears to agree, at least for now. By a 56-39 margin, Americans think it's more important for the government to protect religious liberties over the rights of gays and lesbians. In Congress, the First Amendment Defense Act is gaining traction. It would stop the federal government from taking action against a person or business who acts in accordance with their religious beliefs. That's a move supported by presidential candidate Scott Walker.
To me, protecting our constitutional rights shouldn't just take a piece of legislation. The oath that any federal officer takes is about upholding the Constitution, and the Constitution is very clear about protecting those rights.
The way these GOP candidates see it, the debate over religious liberty boils down to an attempt to erase people of faith from the political equation.
David, it's no secret they want to silence us. The left no longer wants God in the public square. We must not allow that to happen. I can do that by executive order. I can do that by legislation.
Or by nominating Supreme Court justices who are actually conservative.
I think the next president will have a chance to appoint anywhere from 1 to 4 Supreme Court justices. I think it's time we started appointing justices that actually read and apply the Constitution. You know, it's never the Democratic justices that surprise people and all of a sudden become conservatives. It's always the Republican appointees like Souter, like Roberts, like Kennedy.
Judges, the Constitution, and religious liberty, topics that could dominate the political conversation for the foreseeable future. David Brody, CBN News, Washington.
It's a very critical issue indeed, Pat.
Yeah, good report, David. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard about Islam, religion of peace, and all that nonsense. Well, this ISIS is showing the naked face of Islam. And I'm sure there are many, many, many Muslims around the world who are terribly embarrassed, wish ISIS would go away. But the recent abomination that is coming forth from ISIS is that they are now taking female captives and selling them in a bazaar. They're putting prices on young women, and little girls, and sometimes, I guess, boys as well. Look at this. Here's Ephraim.
Pat, ISIS is selling sex slaves, and it even has, as you said, a price list for different types of those slaves. The UN Special Envoy on Sexual Violence says ISIS has created the price list to sell its captured women and children. The slaves can be sold to buyers who include ISIS fighters and the wealthy in the Middle East. This envoy tells Bloomberg Business captured boys and girls ages 1 to 9 sell for the equivalent of $165 US. Adolescent girls can be bought for $124, and women in their 20s are being sold for $85. The UN official, who is himself a Muslim, says fighters will sometimes sell the children back to their families for thousands of dollars in ransom. Ferguson, Missouri saw another night of unrest as protesters tried to mark the anniversary of the death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. Police arrested nearly 24 people. Those arrests came after a gathering that stretched into the early morning hours. Many spent Monday peacefully protesting, but that was interrupted early on by gunfire and a police shooting that left an 18-year-old critically injured. Some are now questioning that shooting. Officers were forced to don riot gear last night as they worked to prevent a repeat of the violence and looting the city saw on Sunday.
Unfortunately, this has been marred. All the good work that's happening, on both sides of the street has been marred by violence. And that's why we have to be here, and that's unfortunate.
Police also made arrests at demonstrations that blocked a busy highway and scuffles at a protest at the federal courthouse. Heartbreaking to see, Pat.
Well, I tell you, Ephraim, I believe deep in my heart that these demonstrations are being caused by professional agitators who are coming into Ferguson. I don't think the people of Ferguson want to blow up their own buildings, tear their own shops apart, and take away their own jobs. I don't think they want to do that, but I think these professional agitators come in, and this is their big day in the sun, and they're out to get it. But when you go back to the facts on Michael Brown, you know, you don't want anybody to be shot. But the truth is the man was guilty of robbing a convenience store. We have the video of him doing it. Then he's walking in the middle of the street, blocking traffic, and apparently he was high on drugs. Then he tries to assault a police officer and take his gun away from him. I mean, this isn't some worthy soul that we should mourn over. The life of any human being is precious, but this kid isn't somebody that should be the poster child of a riot. If some innocent soul has been shot down, that they're the ones that ought to be memorialized, not somebody like this gentle giant. But nevertheless, I think professional agitators are using this thing, and I believe that those of us who care for law and order would say, let's support the police in this, let's stand with the police, and let's not vilify the police like they did in Baltimore. And they're reaping the consequences of trashing the police force. It's not a good thing to do. The police are there to protect and defend the rights of the citizens. And we need to protect the police. I don't want police brutality. I don't want police mistreating citizens, black or white. We don't want police brutality. But at the same time, we do recognize that a well-trained police force is necessary to maintain order. And so this Ferguson thing, as I say, it has to be the work of professional outside agitators, and they've got to be made to pay for their actions. Ephraim?
Pat, China shocked international financial markets today by devaluing its currency in an apparent move to strengthen its economy, which has been slowing down. The Chinese yuan fell nearly 2% after the country's central bank made the move, the biggest drop in a decade. The idea is to make Chinese products cheaper when they're sold in other countries and to keep Chinese workers on the job. Not only has China's once booming economy been showing signs of weakness, but its high-flying stock market has taken a severe hit as well in recent months. Well, the types of foods often favored in the South, fried food, sugary drinks like sweet tea, and processed meats like bacon, can lead to a higher risk of heart attack or heart disease, regardless of gender or race. Those are the findings from a 6-year study published in a Journal of the American Heart Association. The lead researcher warns people who frequently eat a diet including those foods should be aware of their risk of heart disease. And he says people should cut back on such foods and substitute with healthier ones, like possibly baked or grilled chicken, vegetables, and so forth. I think we've reported this before, Pat.
Oh, over and over again. But hey, it's tough. You take away soul food from people and you're hurting them badly. I mean, you are hurting them badly. I mean, you can't drink sweet tea and you can't have big 32-ounce cups of sugary drinks like Coke. And now you can't eat fried food.
Yeah, these are kind of staples in certain parts of the country.
I know, you know.
Your part, to be exact, but you have come free of that.
My part, thank you very much.